moving forward.
All right, welcome back to the Bitrate Podcast. It's where two people, one novice, one professional, sit down and have a conversation about the art. Yes, I've leveled up since last episode. We have a conversation about the art and business of videography, photography, content creation as a whole, frame by frame. So we are your hosts today. I'm Shaquille. This is Dwight. Today we're going to go through step by step what you should do if you're going to get started out in video. We're going to cover the video, the audio, the lighting, the composition, which is also part of video. So without any further ado, we're going to start with what you're seeing, video. And I'm going to need help from you, Dwight. You need to start us off with, what should we start with first if we're going to tackle video? If I were to be handed as a beginner a camera, or even if I wanted to
You already have a camera.
Good point. Good point.
So that's the first point.
Yes.
Anybody who has a decent smartphone made in the last 3, 4, 5 years,
Yeah.
you already have a good camera. Especially if you have one of the more high-end iPhones or high-end Android phones. You already have a pretty good camera. And so I would say master that first.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting hack with your phone. Most smartphones have an app that you can download that gives you manual control over the camera. Some of the phones have it like within the camera itself, within the native camera app. But for most phones, you can download an app. I think Blackmagic has a camera app.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another one I can't remember. But let's say download the Blackmagic camera app. It then gives you manual control of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO.
All right.
Those are the triangle of exposure, right? So if I say aperture,
Yes.
what does that mean to you?
To me, or what I learned from just read enough, is the opening of the little fan blades in a lens and the distance of that opening. That is what the light passes through to hit the sensor. Did that pass?
You see that?
Professor?
That's just a very good, simple way to look at it. Yeah, it's the opening of the aperture opens and allows light to hit the sensor, right? Mm. And so the wider that opening is, the more light comes in, right? Now that will do two things. It will let more light in if you open it up, but it also will separate what's in focus a lot more from what's out of focus, which is what we call depth of field. Some people call it bokeh, or bokeh, depending on where in the world you are. But it's basically a blurrier background or a blurrier foreground, depending on what's in focus, right? So, for example, our camera right now is set to. Hold on. So our camera right now is set to the widest. So the aperture is actually a part of the lens, right? It's not the camera itself that has an aperture, it's the lens. Mm-hmm. So our camera right now, our lens is set at f2.8, which is the lowest this particular lens will go. The lower the number, the more light it lets in, the blurrier the background. So if you had like a f1.2 lens, the background right now would be creamy. Mm-hmm. But let me show you what happens if I increase that ISO, and right now I'm using the monitor and control app on my phone that gives me wireless control of the camera. So I'm going to go to f5.6. As you can see, the image gets darker, but what you probably cannot see is that there's more of the background that's in focus. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to put this to f8, which obviously is too dark. And then I'm going to increase the ISO, if I can find it on the app. ISO is going to set to 2500. Right, so that brings our exposure almost to where it needs to be. So what you're probably seeing is there's more of the curtain that's in focus, and again the image got darker with the aperture. So that's the first two things that you'll typically adjust in my world. I'm either adjusting aperture or ISO most of the times, because my shutter speed is set to what I want it to be, which is 180, right? So
Just to make sure that people are following, if we didn't go over the description of an ISO, the ISO is, correct me if I'm wrong here, is the sensitivity of your camera's sensor. So it is responsible for how much light is hitting the sensor and how sensitive it is to that light. So
right. And with that being said, it is artificial. Right. So everything else, the shutter speed and the aperture, is actual light. That it's more light that is letting into the lens, into the sensor, right? ISO is then that sensor artificially increasing the brightness. And so that will usually increase grain. For this particular camera that we're using, Sony FX30, there's two what you call native ISO, which means the camera has been optimized for these two values to have the most amount of clean image with low noise, right? So for me, it's 800 or 2500. Right now, it's 800 f2.8 with our ISO. Sorry, not our ISO, with our shutter speed at 180 degrees, which means double the frame rate that we're shooting. So we're shooting 24 frames, 23.98, and then the shutter speed is going to be 48, 1/48, right? So that's the 180 degree rule, which means your shutter speed is double your frame rate. Why that's important is it gives you natural motion blur. If you're looking at the motion blur, it looks natural. It looks like what your eyes would see
in real life, yeah.
In real life. If I change that, now I'm going to do some stuff that's going to kind of throw exposure off, but I'm going to increase or ISO, which to the high base.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to drop the shutter speed to about 90. Right? Now that lets in less light, but the motion blur is sharper, so you're seeing less blur.
Yeah.
Right? If you're
and this probably doesn't look very natural to your eyes.
Yeah, I don't know how well this will come across on YouTube land, but this is not very natural. If I increase it a little more, sorry, we're underexposed. You see, there's almost no motion blur between my hands. So it's not natural. It's not the most natural thing. So these are just the basic rules.
Yeah.
Rules can be broken.
For sure. And these rules are more so, in my opinion, guidelines for how it is that you should have your image be properly exposed. This is when everything looks nice and in focus, it's well lit, and things are moving with the right kind of motion. Right? So this is just a beginner. So if any of that confused you, you can probably pause, go watch it again. There are definitely more videos online that tell you more about those things. These are just to get you introduced.
So I just use that to show you can use your phone app. Typically, there's an app that allows you to adjust those values.
Yeah.
So you can start to manipulate exposure. You can manipulate depth of field. You can manipulate motion blur.
Yeah.
So if you were starting out, I would say use your phone and learn how to use those use that exposure triangle, and that will get you a long way off to when you get a professional camera or even a consumer level camera. You know what these things in your camera will do.
Resolution, right? A lot of persons, well, not a lot of persons. I imagine a lot of persons don't think about the resolution they should have or they should be using if they're just using their smartphone. Is it something that you think persons who are starting out should care about? Is like 1080p okay? Is 4K okay?
Well, yeah. If you're starting out doing work for people, the very, very, very basic minimum you should have is 1080p. But I will go as far as to say there are decent cameras right now, like point and shoot cameras or even entry level cameras from I think basically all the manufacturers. I'm a Sony shooter, so and when I say I'm a Sony shooter, it doesn't mean that I think Sony is the best camera.
Right.
It just happened to be what I started out using. I liked it. It got me good results, and so I just kind of stuck with that ecosystem. My lenses are Sony, so I'm just not. I have no motivation to do the whole lens swaps stuff, right? So take that as it is.
Yeah,
I
this is
probably
not
lost
us
half of you because I said that.
Yeah,
but that's fine.
There's this not like a partisan thing. Telling you,
I'm not particular to any brand.
Yeah.
But I can recommend 2 Sony cameras right out the gate. If you're entry level, you have a $500-$600 budget for an okay camera. I would say the Sony ZV-E10 or the E10 Mark II if you can bump your budget up a little bit more. Or the Sony ZV-1. That's like a point and shoot camera. It comes with the lens is built in. It has one step of ND built in, and so that will get you some work. Like you can actually, that was my first camera, and I made money from that camera.
Yeah, it's also important to acknowledge what it is that you're using your camera for. If you want to go over the why you're doing this, that's the first video. You go back and you watch that video.
Yeah.
But if it is that you're probably doing social media stuff versus client stuff versus a whole set situation, you're probably going to have to consider resolution and the triangle we just went through differently, right?
So if you're shooting social media, 1080p is fine.
Yeah.
If you want to have more flexibility to do like interviews or other type of corporate work or event work, I would say 4K is sweet, but anything over 4K for a beginner is just a waste of money. I'll be honest with you. And then there's bitrate, which is the podcast we're on right now.
Of course.
So there's 4K 10-bit. That's like the bitrate is how much color, in a sense, the sensor can capture, and it's 422. So those are like fancy ways to say your sensor is able to capture more information, more color, more exposure, like high dynamic range, and so you can then manipulate that more in post. And I'm going to suggest that you learn how to shoot with your camera in manual mode. So you are controlling those 3 aspects of the exposure triangle. You get good exposure by controlling light, right? And to me, and we'll get into lighting, but I will say once you have covered a decent camera that can shoot at the resolution you need, I think 4K is fine. I think 1080p is good, and then you can work with your budget. But I would say lighting. If you're shooting things where you can control the lighting, then invest more in lighting than being more concerned about resolution.
So before we move on, we're recapping. So the exposure triangle, take your time, figure out how that works in the camera app that you're starting out with on your smartphone. If you're going to consider resolution, determine what you're using the kind of media for. Then hopefully you can give me some what would you call it? Some perspective on the debate between frame rate. So what is frame rate and how necessary is it to shoot at 24 or 30 or 60 or 120? How do we explain to persons, people listening, people at home, what that is, like in layman's terms?
All right. So, all right, what is frame rate? Frame rate is how many frames, which a frame is basically a snapshot. So in essence, the sensor captures this snapshot in this particular amount of snapshots per second, right? Because I don't know if you know this, but videos are actually pictures.
That move, it's crazy.
Right? So
wild.
Pictures, that's why you know the term motion pictures. That's what a movie is, motion picture. So video is actually pictures that are moving. So if the camera is capturing a picture, it's capturing 24 pictures per second, which in 1 second, if I am moving my hand in a second, then it will capture the smooth, which is why shutter speed is important. But we'll talk about that later. But for every second that you're watching, the camera captured 24 pictures, and it merges that as one fluid thing that looks like motion.
Right.
If you've ever seen stop motion photography, it is basically the same thing. It's just less pictures within a second, which makes it look jittery, right? And that's where shutter speed comes in.
Yeah.
So your shutter speed is double your frame rate. That's probably too technical for me to get in, but in essence, the more pictures is captured within a second, is the smoother you can potentially create slow motion video. So for example, we're shooting 24 frames right now. 24 frames, or 23.98 to be specific, or 23.987, depending on where you are. But 23.98 is the Hollywood standard. That's where, for the longest while, decades and decades, Hollywood has been shooting movies at 24 frames. That gives you very natural looking, pleasing motion.
Yeah.
That has been the standard for a long while. Television, when television broadcasting started getting more popular, they started using more 30 frames, or 29.97 frames. So currently, a lot of platforms are more optimized for 30 frames, but those are kind of the two like starting points.
Yeah.
24 frames and 30 frames.
For higher frame rate stuff, we go.
Yeah, so when you start going into 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, 90 frames per second, wherever your camera maxes out, that's when you want to take that footage and slow it down for the final image, final footage, right? So if I shot a video at 60 frames per second and I knew the final delivery of that video was going to be 24 frames per second, I could slow that, or let's say 30 frames per second. If the final delivery video is going to be 30 frames per second, when I'm editing, my timeline will be 30 frames per second, and I could take that 60 frames per second video and slow it down by half or 2 times.
Yes, maths.
Yeah.
I know. If
So
you're scared, take
two
your time.
times slower than it was shot at.
Yes.
And it would look very smooth,
Yeah.
very natural. 1 second.
For sure, for sure.
Marvin Butler. There. If you don't leave it, you can give me about 45 minutes. All right, cool. All right.
So we're speeding through?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So
higher frame rate stuff, you're allowed to slow it down so it looks smooth, it looks cinematic. So
yeah. So if and then 120 frames. If you shot 120 frames on a 30 frames per second timeline, you could slow that footage down 4 times. So that's slower motion that looks smooth and very cinematic.
yeah.
Dare we say?
So moving on to lighting. Remember, we're just touching on the very basics to get you started, to get you comfortable, because hey, that's what we do. Moving on to lighting. Give me a brief overview of why you think lighting is very, very important in making video so much more impactful for the kind of stuff that you do.
So, and this is kind of where the comment section will probably go off.
Yes, please go off.
There's this debate between what a videographer and a cinematographer is, right? And I don't know who's right, but this is how I view it. A videographer is someone who captures an image, captures a scene, captures a circumstance as it is, right? So he's just going out with his camera and he's probably just adjusting his in-camera exposure to make what the scene looks as beautiful as he can make it look, right? So that's typically event coverage, like landscape videography and animal videography. You're just you're just taking natural lighting. That's actually a very good technique to learn, by the way. Learn how to light with natural light. So you're using natural light to, you're not necessarily shaping the light or in any way. You're not manipulating it. You're just manipulating your camera settings to get good exposure, right? Now, in some scenarios, that's good and that's fine. But in other scenarios, you want control, right? And that's where the cinematographer term will typically come in, where a cinematographer does more manipulation of lighting in a scene to create the image that he wants. So that includes bringing in light and subtracting light. So taking away light, blocking light, negative fill. Those are terms you'll hear cinematographers use where they're exposing a scene to how they want it to look. So, but I would tell you that lighting is the art, because that's what cinematography is. If you're starting to do interviews and talking head stuff and demo videos and tutorials where you're using people are in the subject and you have control over the lighting, you want to get good at that. For me, I would prefer if you spent $400-500 less on your camera and buy $400-500 worth of lighting. That will give you a better image than that camera that was $500 more expensive. That's probably a hot take.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer that if you learn how to use lighting well, if you have decent quality lights, like continuous video lights, you can make any decent camera look amazing.
And for those people, if you want to know how to light someone, I imagine that is a much deeper tutorial, but very generally, what do you want to do as a beginner, and what do you want to not do if you're going to light and expose a scene properly? I assume if you're using natural light, you probably don't want to go like full face, full blast with the light.
So if you're using natural lighting, meaning the lighting that you have, but let's say you're able to position the subject, you would want, for me, so the idea, the typical amateur will try to just face the subject towards the biggest source of light, which is usually the sun. And in some cases, maybe that's what you need to do. But for me, I'm looking, that will give them a very flat look, right? Especially depending on where the sun is in the sky. So for example, if the sun is overhead, horrible time to light somebody. Like that's the worst way to light a face. Yeah. Unless you're doing something like extremely creative,
right? You're taking
niche
strong liberties with,
right? You're being extremely creative and dramatic. Go for it. But the general rule is you don't want the overhead lighting from the sun, because that's going to create dark shadows under the eye, and sometimes you can't see the eye, and sometimes the eye is just dark, and so you can't. So that person just looks weird. Zombie, mysterious. Depends on what you
call it. Raccoon eyes.
Raccoon eyes, right? So if I were trying to shoot outdoors, I would not choose midday if I can avoid it.
Yeah.
If I have to use midday, that's where you start bringing modifiers in, right? So for example, I did some vox pops on the street. What we did is we put a diffuser overhead, which is like the cheapest diffuser you can get is just a 5-in-1 reflector. Inside of it there's a diffuser.
Or a curtain, right?
Or a light, thin white curtain, or a shower curtain. That's also a great one. So those are forms of diffusing light. And by diffusing light, we mean we take that harsh light and we push it through some material that softens it and breaks up the light and makes it look more pleasant on a face. So we'd use a diffuser overhead to block or to soften, to reduce also the exposure of the sunlight coming in on that subject. And then we take another piece of 5-in-1 reflector and we bounce typically the white side or the silver side, but most times we'll try to use the white side of the reflector, and we bounce some of that light towards their face to fill in some of those raccoon eye shadows. I don't know if I got too technical, but that's basically the essence of it. Is you want, if you're shooting outdoors and you can't bring lights, bring modifiers.
Nice.
Right? So you diffuse and bounce and cut light.
So I assume there are a couple of things you're going to be hearing as you go along, or you get more technical with stuff like this when it comes to lighting. We're gonna run over them really quickly.
By the way, one mistake.
Yes.
Before we change topic, one mistake that a lot of amateurs will use when they're shooting outdoor is they'll take a person and they'll put him in the shade. So the subject, they'll put him in the shade, and then all of the background is just bright.
Yeah.
Because you can't control the background. You put them in the shade, and so you adjust your exposure for them in the shade. But no, they're probably properly exposed, but then your background is blown out.
I've
right?
done this because, like I said at the beginning, I'm an amateur.
Yeah.
So to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And sometimes that's all you have to work with, and so you have to work with what you have to work with. But you'll hear people say light for spaces, not faces. What that means is if you have control, I would not put the person in. Like I said, I wouldn't put them in the shade. I'd keep them in the sun, diffuse the light from the sun, and then drop the exposure to match, because their face and the outside background will be closer matched. And so you'll have good exposure on them and still be able to see the background.
Okay.
So yeah, that's just maybe a beginner tip.
For sure. So key light, edge light, what do you call it? Environmental light or lights around you. Can we quickly run over those things again? If you're still listening, like it, share it, comment, please, like that you're still here.
Yeah.
Hopefully this is valuable to you guys. So
all right.
key
So
light.
if you're doing faces, people, and even in like product photography or videography, you'll hear the term key light. Key light is the main light that is providing the source of light. The main source of light that's lighting the subject, right? For us, we have our key light facing us directly. We only have one light that we're using right now, and it's directly behind the camera, and it's providing even lighting. It's giving us decent exposure levels, right?
Yeah.
Then we have what we call edge lighting. Now, if you watched our previous video, you'll probably see that it was kind of flat. There was no, there's no creativity. There's no character to that lighting, and it was just because we were moving fast and we couldn't set up too much lights. But anyways, now if you're looking at what's going on, you're seeing some light on the background. On the this side, on the side of the head, the side of the hair, and so that's creating us a little bit of separation from the background, and it's creating a little more visual interest. And for us, so for me, in my typical lighting, like an interview or someone talking to camera, I have to have at least two lights. If I have control over that, I'm using the key light to light the subject. And then the edge light, hair light, backlight, you'll probably hear those terms interchanged. That light is then creating some separation, creating some visual interest on the back end, the rear of that person. If they have hair, then you'll probably, and if you get high enough and they have hair, you'll get a little bit of character and a little visual interest in the hair. If they have a beard, you'll probably see that light kind of come through the beard a little bit and give a little more visual interest. Typically, for me, my personal taste, my edge light will be warmer than my key light. All right, that's my visual taste.
That's a good rule.
Yeah.
Or is it like your rule, or it's just like
no? It's just my taste. Okay. It's not industry standard. You can go cooler than your key light. You can match your key light. I know most people tend towards making it warmer than your key light, but it's not a rule. It's not a hard and fast rule. And again, every single rule, even if it is a rule, you can break it.
You can break it,
right? With intentionality, with purpose. I don't like breaking rules unless there's a reason for it. Like if you see if it matches your taste or it matches your client taste, go for it. Break the rule. And so we have a key light giving us our exposure, and then we'll have our edge light, and then depending on the kind of video you're shooting and the client what the client wants, sometimes they want more drama, right? Sometimes they want more shadow, more contrast, and so what we'll typically do then is sort of this technique called Rembrandt lighting, right? Rembrandt lighting is where you take your key, which right now it's directly in front of us. So we take our key and we come around to the side. Let's say I was lighting myself. I would take the key and I'd probably come around this side because the camera is here. So I want the key to be lighting this side of my face.
Yeah, at the 45-degree angle.
Yeah, about a 45-degree angle from the camera.
Yeah.
I would have a little bit of shadow on this side, and then I typically will put my edge light on the opposite side of the key. So I have key light, camera, and then the edge light right here, which then gives me a little bit of exposure right on the back, but a little bit of shadow on this side. And that's if they want drama. Sometimes on this side, there's like a reflective surface or a white surface, or sometimes you're still getting too much light on this side of the face, depending on what you want. So then we'll bring in what we call a negative fill, which is a black piece of material, cloth, duvetine, or I don't like most a lot of people use like moving blankets or sound blankets.
Oh, okay.
Or the black side of the reflector, the 5-in-1 reflector, or any kind of black material that's absorbent enough that it will, or matte enough that it will not bounce light back towards this. So that black material will absorb any kind of reflection or any kind of light coming on this side. So it'll give them some more character, some more drama, some more contrast.
Yeah.
But that's up to taste. If you're not using that negative fill or that black light, depending on what you're shooting, if it's corporate and it's high key, then you'll have key light, fill light, and edge light. So that's a three-point lighting technique. But in a lot of cases, I'm using 2 lights and potentially either a bounce, like the white side of the reflector, to bounce a little bit of light towards this side, not much, just a little bit, or depending on again what we're shooting, or the black side of that, some black material to create contrast. So I'm usually using 2 lights, not 3.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about like practical lighting, like having lights visible in the shot?
So practical lighting helps to sell the lighting.
Yeah.
So it for the viewer, it starts to look natural. So it starts to look like this scene was not lit. This is just the natural lighting in the space. So for example, you're seeing that backlight right now. If we had a wider frame and I had like a lamp right here, you would start to think that it's the lamp that's casting that little warm glow on the side of my head. But if I didn't mention that we're using lights, probably a lot of people, I mean, the professionals would probably know that we put edge light there, but a lot of viewers would look at it and they're like, oh, they probably have 2 lamps behind them, just out of frame, we have 2 lamps or some other form of lights. But practical lighting is when you bring those normal pieces of light like lamps or lamp shade or like fixtures, lighting fixtures, and you'd include that in the frame, and someone would think, oh, that's what's casting that light. And in a lot of cases, it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a candle. So for example, if we had a scene where it was a fireplace, right? So the wide shot, for example, would look like, oh, there's a fireplace, and so you're seeing the warm glow on the face, and the fire is what's lighting them. When you're going on a tight shot, typically they'd bring in lights. So there's a warm glow, there's some kind of light that's creating that warm glow, and that is what we call practical lighting. Yeah. It's in essence some form of lighting that's in the frame that causes the viewer to believe that source of light is what's lighting the subject.
Often called motivated lighting.
Ooh, you're hitting them with the terms.
Yeah, I'm learning. I'm here learning.
Yeah,
I'm more of a fanatic about stuff like this, so it's a lot easier for me to understand. But if you're not following at home, just take your time.
Yeah, I mean,
watch back what we've gone over so far.
I don't even know what this guy watches in terms of where he gets his education from, but because of how he uses terms, I know that he goes and he does his research. He's watching cinematography tips. He's watching lighting techniques and all that kind of stuff, because that's what I do. I have no formal training in lighting techniques. I can't really tell you too much scientific stuff in terms of like ratio, like shadow and contrast ratio and all that kind of stuff. I really can't explain to that depth, but I understand enough to actually use it in real life. And I think that's where you need to do research. That's where you need to learn. That's where you need to, sharpen your skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the third thing that we're going to end up rating at the end of this video is what they consider half of video, audio. You're able to hear us now because we are recording from microphones. So tell us a little bit about the role or the impact of microphones in your work or in work that you really, really admire.
Yeah. I mean, like he said, audio is considered half of video.
Yeah.
And some people tell you it's more than half of video. Why? Because if audio sounds terrible and video looks great, quality, image quality looks great, most people will click off the video. But if the audio is great and the image quality is okay, most people will continue watching. So audio is, I mean, because if you're watching a piece of content, I mean, you've probably watched a movie where the sound mix was terrible. So it's like the music is loud and the vocals are low, and so it's like everybody's grumbling like this movie sucks.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you watch another movie where the vocals are great, like high, like proper levels. The music has nice, so the music is so well mixed in that you don't even think about the fact that the music is playing. Like you've watched those movies where in real life, why is there violins playing?
Right. What's going on?
But the violins come in and it starts to sell the emotion. It's a slow type. I mean, we've watched like Jaws, right?
Yeah.
You watch Jaws,
See how
and you
iconic-
hear the theme music
Yeah.
come in, and once you hear the turn it,
Yeah.
you know the shark's about to pop up out of nowhere. So you start bracing yourself, and bam, shark comes up, and music hits a crescendo. And so, anyways, I'm kind of going into my nerdy mind, but sound design is more of an advanced level of audio. That's where you start bringing in sound effects, music to help bring out the emotion and sell the story. But talking about the basic part of it is mics and audio levels. If you can't hear the person talking, or if the audio is garbled or interference or scratchy or too loud, then it's distracting and nobody really wants to listen to that.
So just like lighting, it's a matter of placement.
Yeah.
So for mics, and there are many different types of mics, and I assume we'll go over that at some other time. Where do you place the mic if you're a beginner? You're using your smartphone. You're at your window. You've now gone over the exposure triangle. You've now done the whole lighting situation. You want to really really kick audio into high gear. Where do you put the microphone?
So that's a good question, and it depends. To me, it depends on what I'm shooting. So, we're living in a world where content is so much different from what it was 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, if you saw people clipping some weird black things on their shirts, you'd be like, "What the heck is that? It's distracting and it's weird." Nowadays, we have these wireless mics and they have magnets, and you just clip them on, and then you just shoot some video, and you get great audio, and nobody complains. So it depends on what you're shooting. For me, if I'm shooting a client interview or a corporate interview, I'm hiding the mics. We don't want to see mics in documentary interviews, in corporate interviews. We don't want to see mics unless the client's like, I don't care, like don't even bother with it, like it's fine. If it's like a TV type interview, a lot of TV broadcasting channels, you see the lavalier mics, just barely visible, but it's a lavalier mic. It's not distracting, it's not loud. So there are places where showing the lavalier, which is the cable mic that kind of just clips on here, some cases that's fine. I'm usually trying to hide the mic in most cases. We're doing a podcast now, so we just clip on the mics. And
when I go on the road and I interview people and it's just run and gun and I'm trying to get people's
social
responses,
media content,
I just clip on and you will see them wearing it in the video, which is not very professional again.
Yeah, I mean, social media content, quick run and gun stuff, it works. Event coverage stuff, it works, and nobody is really upset about it. But when you start going into telling stories and being documentary type stuff and that kind of stuff, then you want to hide the mic, because for me, at least, when I'm shooting that kind of content, the idea I want to portray, or the mood I'm trying to portray, is that you're kind of listening in to this person talking or having a conversation. And so if you were listening in, you wouldn't have a mic on the shirt, right? It's like just a conversation between that guy and the interviewer, and you just happen to be watching, right? And so you don't need to see a mic. So in most cases, for something like that, I'll use a shotgun mic, boomed overhead, out of frame. For me, my favorite mic for interviews is shotgun mic. I'll use a lavalier for backup, but the audio I prefer, the quality of audio I like to hear most often is a shotgun mic boomed overhead. You mentioned placement. You want to get the mic as close to their, like this region. So people just think it's the mouth. It's not just the mouth, because the mouth is not the only part that is creating sound.
It's the whole vocal cavity.
Yeah, a lot of the sound is coming from the chest, the throat, the larynx, right? So a lot of the sound is coming from here, and so you're hearing the depth, like especially the lower tones, the depth and the strength of the voice is within this region, and so you want the mic somewhere within this region, right? Or pointing towards this region,
Right.
So lavalier mics, clip-on mics, we can usually get them within this region, and so you'll get nice, clear, full of depth audio.
So persons might be asking, well, what kinds of mics? Well, there are things that you have to consider before you think about types of mics, called polar patterns, right? It is the region around the capsule of a microphone that captures the audio. So for lavalier mics that we've been talking about, is omnidirectional. Don't let that word scare you. It is just taking audio
from everywhere, basically.
Everywhere.
Yeah, but obviously the sounds, the sources that are closest to it will be the loudest.
Yeah.
But it will still be picking up a lot of ambient sound.
Right. The shotgun mic that he mentioned, that's just a tube-shaped microphone that's usually on the top of a camera. Don't worry, you can Google it. That is more directional, depending again on the
usually they're more
model.
directional. The more expensive they are is the more narrow that sort of pickup pattern is, which means it rejects a lot of the outside noise. So for street interviews or anything where you don't have control over the ambient sounds, a shotgun mic or something that's like a hypercardioid, I think is the term for it. Hypercardioid just means most of the pickup pattern is in front of the mic, so it rejects most of the side and sounds behind. So if I'm using a hypercardioid shotgun mic and I'm pointing it towards them, then I could have a ceiling fan going and it's not even there's almost nothing. It's not picking up any of it. It's not picking up too much of the different appliances in the room that's like, humming and buzzing and all that kind of stuff. And if there's some background noise outside, it's not really picking that up. It's picking up mostly what it's pointed at.
So distance probably also, definitely plays a factor in capturing the audio. If a really, really, really good mic is not very close to the subject, like Dwight mentioned, it won't capture the audio the way you want it to. And sometimes microphones that are more cheaply made but are brought closer and placed correctly.
You're so right on that. Like, I mean, today, honestly, I would not say that any mic works.
Right.
But I would say any okay quality, decent quality microphone that's well placed will give you good audio.
Yeah, just like cameras,
it's like camera. Any good camera with good lighting, with
good technique,
good composure will give you a good image. So I'm not going to join the debate about which one of the wireless lav mics are the best. There's Rode, there's DJI, there's Hollyland, there's Sennheiser. They're all making great mics, and then there's the cheaper qualities like Boya and Saramonic, and they are all, honestly, they're all good.
Very good.
Especially for, again, you have to ask the question, what are you going to use it for? If you're going to use for social media, almost anything will work with decent quality if you place it well. I would typically stick within. So I sort of look at them as the big four. In terms of lavalier mics, there's and in no particular order, people.
Right. We're no favoritism.
Yeah, no favoritism. We happen to use DJI just because it was the one that made sense for me when I was buying it. So there's DJI, There's Rode. Not Sarah.
Sennheiser?
I'm shooting myself in the foot. Hollyland.
Yeah.
And what's the fourth one? I lost my train of thought.
Sennheiser?
Sennheiser.
Yeah.
Right. So those are like the four
Like
wireless lav mics
Yeah.
I prefer
Yeah.
and I would recommend if you were trying to get a lavalier mic.
Yeah.
Why I like these wireless lavalier mics is because they start to become fairly versatile.
Oh yeah.
Because I can clip it on. I can use a magnet or the actual clip, and I can clip it on, and I can and boom.
You can plug in
I
a
can
lav
get good,
and run it through
I can
people's
run.
tools.
I can plug in a lav, run it, hide the lav, or even let the lav peek out, and good. I'm good to go. I can even plug like a 3.5 millimeter shotgun mic in this thing, boom it overhead, and get a wireless boom mic, straight into camera. So these, I would say, are some of the most versatile ones. They're smaller ones, cheaper ones, but if you had the budget for it, I would recommend one of them that has an input for a lavalier mic.
Yeah, and
Because that gives you the most flexibility. If that's something.
and if it's something that you want to grow with, something that
Yes, exactly.
he loves to talk about 32-bit float. Now, what is 32-bit float for the he's having a moment.
All right. For me, why I love the term 32-bit float, and I know some people like overblow the term, and it's like this huge marketing thing right now.
Yeah.
So all the manufacturers are jumping in on the 32-bit float train. But for what I do and the run and gun style and the fast paced style that I typically am working in, not having to worry about audio levels is just one point of stress that I don't have to really have, right? So 32-bit audio, in essence, is as raw as audio can get right now. There might be in 2 years, just probably 32-bit float's like updated technology. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know the science behind it. So maybe 32-bit float is as raw as it gets.
Yeah.
But right now, 32-bit float allows you to, if somebody's speaking loud and they start shouting, typically with a 24-bit audio recorder, you would lose that top end. So as the audio peaks, it cuts off the parts that it can't capture because it's too much information. So 32-bit float, you can take that peak and you can bring it down and you didn't lose any information, right? You can also bring audio level that was recorded too low, typically with a 24-bit audio recorder, and not all, because some of them have really good preamps, but typically with a 24-bit audio recorder, if it was recorded too low and you bring the audio level up, there's little to no noise that comes with that, with bringing that audio level up. That hissing sort of bad frequency noise that you hear, that you typically don't get that with 32-bit float. So these little things, they record 32-bit float like 8 hours or 12 hours worth of audio on a 32-bit float. So you get a lot of record time and you don't have to worry about your audio levels too much.
Yeah. So should we go on to composition, or should we just rate the three that we've gone through so far in the interest of time?
Composition, I think, is...
Do you think that deserves its own thing? Or?
Yeah, I think we'll have to talk about composition and other techniques that come with framing and camera movement. So I think that's a separate...
So stay tuned.
Yeah,
You need to...
a separate topic.
You need to be here for all of that.
Yeah.
But right now we're just covering the basics. Covering the camera, the audio, and the lighting.
Yeah.
Right? We want to ensure that you have the very basics starting out.
So let me give you some overarching recommendations.
Yes.
For camera, get the best camera that you can afford.
Yeah.
That allows you to then get one or two decent lenses and one or two decent lights.
Okay.
Right? So if your budget was $2,000, don't buy a $2,000 camera. Buy a $1,000 camera. You can get two prime lens or probably one decent zoom lens with $500-600, and then you can get one or two decent lights. Right now, it's like, I mean, I like Nanlite, and throwing that brand out there. I like Nanlite because they have some really decent budget quality lights for almost like ridiculous amounts of money, and because they're so good, they're becoming a lot more popular within the space. If you want something that's gonna be a little more, maybe give you a little more lifespan, maybe potentially give you, like, you can, like, if you're gonna kind of be more abusive with your gear, then Aputure makes great stuff. Aputure lights are amazing. Amaran is probably a step down from Aputure. Amaran, I think, is a little more competitive with Nanlite. I think Amaran and Aputure are kind of owned by the same.
Remember, guys, episode 2, we are shilling. All right, shilling. We're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
Just getting warmed up. So anyways, lighting for me, audio, focus on that before we talk about this next time. Before you go buy the gimbal,
Yeah.
before you go buy the drone,
Yeah.
get yourself some decent lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, out of everything that we've covered so far, the video, the lighting, and the audio, we need a rating. Remember, this is bit rate, so we rate things, right? So, for the video, what would you rate that in terms of like how much you need to understand the technique before you proceed?
If you're a hobbyist,
Out of 10.
if you're a hobbyist, you can, like, I mean, you can shoot on your phone.
Yeah.
If you're shooting social media content, you can shoot on your phone. And because you're shooting, if you like shooting on your phone, and it's like using the phone's native camera app, that phone nowadays, these smartphones are doing all sorts of computation.
Yeah, for sure.
To make you look exposed, and the sky is exposed, and everything is
Yeah.
exposed, and everything looks great. So that's fine, but you can typically tell that it's a phone. If you start doing content for clients and customers, then you need to get yourself a decent camera. Work your way up to it. I don't buy everything all together. I started with one camera, and then I got a little cheap light, and then I got a little cheap little shotgun mic, like on camera shotgun mic, and that was my starting point, right? And then you take that and you bump that up, you bump the camera up, you kind of level up as you go, but I think a lot of times people jump too much into the exciting things.
Yeah, because it's big, it's flashy.
Yeah, the gimbal and the drones are very exciting. The slider, very exciting. It's cool. I mean, it's cool stuff, right? But if you want to really level up your game, level up your lighting skills and your audio.
Yeah, but for video, what's your rating out of 10? Mine is like a 3 because
like in terms of camera,
yeah,
I'd say like 4.
yeah. These glass and metal boxes that we have in our pockets make it super easy, super simple.
Yeah. People,
Even though we recommend manual mode, like going
you
automatic.
can do manual mode on your phone.
Yeah.
And depending on what you're doing, start with auto.
Yeah.
Start with just a native camera app on your phone, and that will get you.
So is the rating 3?
3, 4. Yeah.
3, 4. All right. So lighting.
Lighting is like, for me,
Out of 10.
right now,
Yeah.
I nerd out.
Yeah, you should have seen it with
lighting.
these lights, man. It was going crazy.
Yeah, I nerd out more about lighting than camera. Like, I just bought 2 light stands. I was so excited, like,
For the stand, for the
stands,
light, for the
bro. It's
stand,
like it's just
for the
a
light.
two metal piece of thing.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
So like grip and lighting accessories are almost my favorite things these days. So I'd say a 10.
10. Wow. 10. Okay.
I'd be more excited for Nanlite and Aputure
Yeah.
coming out with a new product than Sony or Canon coming out with a new camera.
I'm gonna go 6.5, particularly because for me, usually where I'm shooting things, it's
Natural lighting.
It's natural lighting. It's more controlled lighting. I'm getting more and more into the idea of creating lighting for a space. So I want to get those little portable lights, those lights that you can put in different places.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when I say lighting, I'm nerding out about lighting. It's not just the light itself. it's also the modifiers that comes with those lights.
Oh yeah. Oh
Right,
yeah.
so that's why I was so excited about the light stands, the C stands, right? Because this particular C stand, it's very budget friendly, and it comes in a case that's easy to carry 2 C stands, right? So that's why I'm kind of nerding out about it. But modifiers like diffusions, negative fills, like things like Fresnels and spotlight, conical snoots, optical snoots, and that kind of stuff. Those are things I'm nerding
I
out.
know you guys are glazing over right
Yeah,
now.
like half of that you probably
the
maybe
man
missed
just
you.
says snoots.
Yeah.
All right.
Snoots are fun.
Yeah.
You can Google what an optical snoot is. But these things, and a lot of the times they're a lot cheaper than camera gear and gimbal and drones, but they are very much overlooked. And for me now, I'm excited about getting modifiers and grip essentials like clamps.
Yeah.
Stupid nerdy stuff like
Clamps.
Cardellini clamps.
Yeah.
And quarter stop grid cloth. Like that's kind of stupid stuff I'm nerding out about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the final category, audio.
Audio is
For me,
super
is the big
important.
boy. Yeah, that's the big boy for me. I go 9. I would go 9 out of 10 because I
I'll
see
go as far as a 10 out of 10 because if there's no audio,
wow.
there's no video.
For real. The thing is, I've noticed the vast difference between what it sounded like when I was just using the audio from my phone versus when I had a wireless. It is a huge jump.
Yeah.
Because
Just recording with the mics on your phone,
yeah,
I mean, they hear you.
yeah, but it's
But
not.
then when you clip on a mic on that, bro.
Yeah, and the wireless microphone that I had, it has noise cancellation. I'm telling you, technology is great. You can now isolate a noisy area and just focus on someone's voice in the edit. It is great. It is amazing. So 9 out of 10.
And then, I mean, even with like AI right now, the editing software I use has an amazing AI noise cancellation. It's like you'll be standing on the corner of a street, noisy cars, trucks, people, wind noise, and you click noise cancellation in the
Everything
software.
just-
And it just zooms in
Yeah.
on that person's voice and nothing else exists. So, I mean, what a time to be alive. Man.
Yeah,
We're in such a great time
Great
for
stuff.
video and
What a
audio
great
here.
time to hit the like button. You know, to comment. To,
Oh yeah, I thought they already did that.
yeah.
What you waiting on?
I don't know. But it is a awesome time to be alive with all of this stuff. Hopefully, all of this stuff that we've gone over has been valuable for you. Hopefully, you're still with us. Hopefully, you're going to be around for more stuff to come. So, do we have a sign out? Do we have a sign out now? Until next time.
Until next time, we'll see you.
We'll see you.
Bitrate Podcast.
Yeah. All right, that's us. That is us.
I'm
How
gonna
you
get some
feeling?
food, bro.
Yeah, I need some.